This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this one comes from Tarvis. And the question is, how would a socialist economic system prevent monopoly? Would the government have to step in and break up monopolies after they form, which is the capitalist system, basically? Would it be as unsuccessful, basically, as capitalism has been, since the problem of monopoly is as urgently with us today, for example, in high tech, as it was 100 years ago in other areas like steel and oil and so on? Let me try briefly to respond to this question. Competition is a desirable characteristic in many ways, as is cooperation. These things should not be seen as polar opposites or as either-ors. An intelligently structured, social welfare-focused economic system would want to make use of the benefits of cooperation and the benefits of competition, and likewise to minimize the costs and difficulties of both cooperation and competition. And that means trial and error, putting these important qualities together in ways that reinforce their good outcomes and limit their bad consequences. And so it would be in a socialist economy that was governed by rational social welfare optimizing, consensus building decision making. And my guess is there would be limits on corporate size, how many companies can serve a market, and so on. For example, it is likely the case that beyond a certain size, it becomes very difficult to govern an enterprise democratically. Beyond a certain size, having large numbers of people participate really in looking at and deciding the key questions probably becomes unwieldy. So that would be a limit. Because it's important in socialism to guarantee the democratic ownership and operation of enterprises, you wouldn't want them to get very large, and that would be a limit on monopoly. Here's another way to measure it. What share of a market in any particular product does each of the enterprises producing that product have? If only one enterprise serves a market, that's a monopoly by definition. Both monopolies and situations where there are very few servers of a market, an oligopoly as it is called. These are probably things we want to avoid in a socialist economy. So we would have a rule that governs such economies so that we can get the competition among competing enterprises that we want. We would allow for competition to produce rewards for those who compete well and some costs for those who don't. But we would not allow the winner to destroy and absorb the loser. That's the way it works in capitalism, but that's not the way it would work in socialism, where unemployment would be the irrationality it is and therefore be outlawed. The company that might lose the competition would have itself redesigned to re-enter a little bit later, perhaps in better form, go to another industry, but never leave so that only one or two firms are left, because that would lose us the benefit of the competition. In other words, you arrange markets if you use them, you arrange competition and cooperation so that you get a good, decent economic system that preserves certain core socialist values, like democratic decision-making within the enterprise, like co-respective behavior between the enterprise community of workers and the neighboring community that hosts the enterprise, the residential community, and a whole host of other comparable socialist objectives. In the simplest sense, capitalism organizes competition around its values, and that includes how it deals or doesn't with monopoly. Socialism would use competition and deal with monopoly in ways that are consistent with its quite different values. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work.